Chapter 2. The Encounter. Quote, "A famous guru came to see me and said, 'I am a guru with many followers. I started with one, and now I have thousands and so many more, both in the West and in the East, especially in the West, and I cannot withdraw from them. They are part of me, and I am part of them. They have built me, and I have built them too.'" Jiddu Krishnamurti. In this way, Enrique, before leaving Italy and leaving his home, arranged other appointments with Nicole, one in Rome and another after a few weeks in Florence. They were always accepted for her, confirmed enthusiastically, love-bombing, and then she does not show up, discard, for excuses created. More red flags that Enrique did not understand, or that he simply wanted not to see. Closing one eye, because it was easier to idealize a person who did not correspond to him than to face the hard truth. Because one of the difficulties in being in a relationship with a narcissist is that they don't want to set you free. It's not because they truly love you, but rather because they fear losing you. Due to the existential void, they live within themselves. It's like dying and not resting in peace, but rather staying in purgatory, waiting for the nothingness they were promised. In other words, without paradise or hell at infinity. They exhibit a sick, distorted, narcissistic, and selfish behavior, much like many religions in the world. But he doesn't lose faith. He's a believer until death, loyal and idealistic in this fantastic relationship, so he keeps believing in her, but he's not naive. As a result, he goes to Germany again to wait for Nicole, who this time gave him a new date and had everything bought and organized to come and visit. But in the end, due to her fashion and business projects in the futuristic city called Enome, where she was on the front line to build the new Versailles in the middle of the desert, with oases emitting a fresh and clean aroma, like potpourri, and her stay that had already been more than 4 months in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, she couldn't come to Cologne, Germany. Moreover, it wasn't allowed to make phone calls because the same king, Mohammed bin Salman, had blocked her, including her mobile, due to the high level of security in that philo-Islamic Arabic country, strong as black coffee. Interesting cybersecurity system, Enrique thought while daydreaming about making love to her. From there, 2 or more dates can be added that were always cancelled for one reason or another. So much so that Enrique had lost count and hope. Hanging like a pig with the apple in its mouth, pierced by a steel metal skewer from hole A to hole B, slowly roasting to integrate the seasoning of the spices into the meat of this animal. My arms have fallen from praying and waiting, like Moses on Sinai. Le roi est mort, vive le roi, Enrique expresses to Nicole, while thinking of a psalm from the Talmud and then in the Jewish Torah. Psalm 10:1 says, "Why do you stand afar off, O Lord? Why do you hide yourself when there are problems? But it is better to wait in the Lord's chamber, to be prepared for the blessing that the Lord himself has for you, and not for the promises of infamous or selfish men. So don't worry, no stress. Do not doubt the strength of your Savior, because he will never forget you. Think that you are so important to the Lord that he has your name tattooed on the palms of his hands, engraved on his skin. He knows everything about you. So uproot that depression, because you dwell under the shadow of the Almighty." At the same time, Nicole had finally prepared herself, psychologically, physically, and spiritually, to visit her beloved Enrique. The time had come to enter Cologne from an unknown location, as her departure point, whether it was Italy, France, or Saudi Arabia, was not known until then. But yes, she was determined to visit him. Although he had cut off all contact with her despite the feelings he had for her, she knew this and didn't want to lose him just like that. She didn't want to lose her poppy honey, her Sonny. Nicole promises Enrique that she will never tell him when she's coming and that she will show up unannounced. "Can you give me a date?" Enrique asks Nicole. No, I don't want to give any more dates, and don't ask me for more photos or video calls, because I won't do it. Don't ask when I'm coming. When I can, I'll come, and that's it, she firmly replied. And that's how she finally arrived in Cologne, or rather, she knocked on the green hope door of the building where Enrique lived on Thursday, July 9th, 2020, when he returned from the gym after 10:30 p.m. and wasn't expecting any visitors. As a reminder, they hadn't felt each other for months, and he had already started to erase her from his soul, mind, and heart. In other words, a complete cancellation of what once was. Enrique received a message from Sylvia, his colleague from Iuasa. "Well, where are you, handsome?" Sylvia wrote. "I just left the gym," he replied. "Well, sexy boy, come immediately. We're hungry, thirsty, and want to have dinner." "Are you in?" Sylvia demanded. "I'm on my way." Enrique confirmed to Sylvia that he wanted to eat, drink, and share with all of them as well. And so he had met some work colleagues for a pizza and a beer on the Heumarkt Square, which was only a few meters from his flat. Enrique arrives late to the table and only stops briefly to greet everyone and announces them that he has to go home briefly first because he wants to drop some things off. "First, I have to go to my apartment to drop off this gym bag and return immediately," he told his friends. A few meters away, he notices a man of medium short stature, bald, and of Caucasian complexion, along with a beautiful blonde in a black Prada dress ringing the doorbell of his building. However, beautiful blondes in Germany are quite common, so he continues on his way without paying much attention to them. As you know, he didn't have many photos of Nicole, so he couldn't identify them. He continues searching for his house keys in his gym bag to open the building's door. But in just an instant, they find themselves closer than ever. Suddenly, he almost collides face to face with Nicole because she was walking in the opposite direction, looking down in a sad and discouraged manner. They come face to face, body to body, and for a few fractions of a second they look at each other. Still, it's not enough for Enrique to recognize her. Instead, Nicole recognizes him immediately and exclaims in Italian, very nervous and agitated. "Oh, cazzo," she says, like a dog terrified of fireworks in the middle of the street. He is bewildered by the strange and unexpected situation he is experiencing at that precise moment, still not understanding the whole dynamic. She quickly turns around, walks away with her back turned, and remains petrified like a stress-frozen chameleon in this small street of the old city, Altstadt, called Salzgasse. Enrique doesn't understand. The only thing he thinks at that moment is that his friends are waiting for him. But he takes a moment to be polite to these two unknown strangers and offer help or information because it was evident that this couple was looking for someone or something. So he nods his head and smiles friendly to these porcelain mannequins, thinking, "Welcome. What are you looking for?" as he looks at the two embalmed mummies. But the man accompanying Nicole also remains mummified, in silence, just looking at her, and then at him. This back-and-forth exchange continues repeatedly until Enrique gets tired of this boring scene and leaves. Another lobotomized people in the city, Enrique thought as he observed these two strangers. Enrique waited for a few seconds, and seeing no response from them, he greeted them. And automatically he opens the building door to go upstairs and do what he had promised his friends. While doing all this, he turns up his music to a high volume and doesn't realize that they continued ringing the doorbell. A few minutes after entering the apartment, he grabs everything he needs for the night and goes back to Heumarkt Square. That night it began to rain heavily with lightning and thunder, reminding him of when he sporadically wears his queen bee hunter shoes that emit milk, honey, and so much water for the nature. Therefore, he was cautious about wearing those shoes because it was a guaranteed rain that nourished the driest or most sterile land. It was like squashing an annoying insect that hindered life. It was as if nature and the gods were crying for the misfortune of those in love. She did not have the courage to call him again on the phone, or at least to return since she was not recognized. Her pride, ego, or vanity was tragically wounded, and this made her disappear. What a shame. Why? Wieso? To see you and not be recognized. Enrique complained to the Lord who always watches over and cares for him. The next day, when Enrique woke up abruptly, it dawned on him that the man was not her husband or boyfriend. Rather, he was Nicole's assistant, as she had mentioned before. She had already talked about him, mentioning that he was always present with her. The elegant and sexy woman, dressed all in black, dress and handbag, in Brada and Manel, was finally Nicole, with her gay assistant or homosexual baggage carrier. Although a few days later, Enrique sent her 2 emails and called her directly at work, and she returned his call to have a phone conversation. He had called her at the office, and she had instructed her office to inform her immediately in case Enrique called or left a message for her. Elena, here, I'm writing down this name and adding it to my list of people. He is Enrique Rivera. If he calls, please let me know as soon as possible since he's a friend and is alone in a foreign country, Nicole explained to the company's secretary. All right, no problem, Nicole, the secretary replied. So when they spoke, he told her everything that had happened. However, Nicole Vigne denied it and sarcastically refused to acknowledge it since her ego had been extremely humiliated. It was like living in 2 parallel universes with different realities, because they only observed the colors that interested them. It was like watching him look up from hell, while she approached her balcony of clouds in paradise to look at her beloved amid the flames of the abyss. Because she remembered that in the first few months of their conversation, Nicole had told him, "When you see me, you will recognize me." Such was her dream of grandiosity, of love, or of ego. Immediately, and I won't say a word, and my heart will race like 1,000 wild horses in the vast meadow of spring, she dreamed in her fantasies of a perfect blue prince. And everything was true, except that Enrique did not recognize her and paid no attention at all because, for him, looking at a beautiful woman accompanied by a man was of little principle and lacked respect. He also disliked attention seekers. In that precise moment, these women lose all their splendor. Several months pass without them contacting each other due to their poor communication, anger, and pride mixing like a cocktail within them. Then, Enrique proposes that he is willing to come to Riyadh to see her, but Nicole's little motivation, almost depressive, with a negative attitude towards everything, demotivates Enrique. And Nicole rejoices in a passive-aggressive manner in silence, with an internal joy, an artificial satisfaction that fills her with a grace that is not real because she is not the giver of grace. She can only receive, and that's why her delight is not genuine. The poor man's mortification is a mirror effect that reflects on herself. What a misery! Like all expert manipulators of stupid men, they delight in making their own blood, their own species, delirious until they dry up their eggs, the testicles that produce life, and at the same time hang and dry them in the sun as a prize, as a reward for their ability to turn the sexual power table. These women do not want to acknowledge that man is a giver and woman is receptive. Instead, they only focus on the offspring they have and forget their life partner. If both, man and woman, are extremely strong and intelligent, it is only necessary to complement each other in the lack of one and the goodness of the other. This would give a beautiful shape to the puzzle of life. You can't or don't have what it takes to come here. You won't overcome the bureaucratic, political, and/or religious restrictions of this country. Moreover, we won't be able to be together in the same room or house, and don't forget that we are in the midst of a pandemic. The situation is very difficult. So it's better to forget all this because it's simply impossible, and we can't run against the destiny of life, she says to Enrique because she loves to criticize him passively, as always, screwing incompetence into him, and gradually demasculinizes him with a clever and particular demasculinization. Not to mention the rejections of making a video call, the drops during each phone call, while she is there, if she is there. Among other forms of gaslighting, which are obvious red flags, ignored by Enrique. Like when she goes to Oman on vacation and sends him some photos to inspire him during his depressive moment of continuous waiting. But she cares about nothing more than herself. Where he thought, well, you're going to enjoy life on your own without thinking about me, who is still waiting for you and is here wanting to see you and touch you. And let's not forget that at that time, Enrique's sister, Evelyn, was advising him during their regular phone calls. Nicole Vigne is not real. I don't like her personality. She's a catfish, a cat that fishes for fish. And if she is real, then she's not mentally healthy. Because you wait for a person for months without letting yourself be seen, only making promises that ultimately turn out to be impossible and ineffective in action. Run, Enrique. Run now while you still have time and don't continue in this toxic relationship. What's her problem that she is so complicated to be seen? And moreover, she only looks for excuses even to coordinate a brief encounter. For example, how hard is it to have a simple coffee together? Don't you think that at this point, not even with Queen Elizabeth of England, is it so difficult to get a date to meet? Evelyn would tell her childish and ignorant brother, who didn't know all these deceitful plots of human beings, the most dangerous animals on this earth. But Enrique still didn't understand. Why so much evil in this world? Why, if this planet has enough for all species? Maybe it's the nature of the world itself, but good people will overcome all those misfortunes through resilience, determination, and the goodwill stored in their hearts, in this way giving him in return a divine sperm. At this point, while he is talking to Evelyn, he goes on a journey to analyze the global situation that the planet is experiencing. He says that zoos have the wrong animals in captivity because it is these same humans who kill each other, just to please themselves selfishly. Instead, these wild animals are angels in captivity. Extradited from their lands, others driven to extinction, and many more are still today placed as trophies behind a showcase, in a fish tank, or enclosed in metal bars. Instead, there are more than 465 species on this planet that live as they please, love everything that makes them happy, and don't have orthodox rules of society, religion, or politics. And guess what? In the end, these species are absolutely healthier in every sense than us, as the dominant species who have to lie or omit continuously to play this manipulative game of people enslaved by the same system. But if we have to compare the evil of human beings who cut down trees only for monetary gain of a few virtual coins, the same centuries-old trees of this land that will be used as papyrus to print your death bills, and on the other hand, the life of the Amazonian forests or the African savannas, the latter are harmless. But it was in the war of fauna and flora that these cursed saints, unbelieving and greedy men, feared the loyalty of these animals to their king and sovereign, who would one day return to settle accounts and rescue them from human slavery. Think that only a snake has the power to scrutinize your mind and heart in a matter of seconds, and from the moment you lie, it bites you with its poisonous toxins. Yes, it's those same toxins that we use today to create medicines by pharmaceutical companies. Because these animals are expert guardians who perceive the true intention that man hides in his heart. But they patiently await their liberator and king, who will first take them for a walk through the antechambers of those empires that are built in those civilized cities. Returning to the telephone conversation with Evelyn, the Indian woman. But the thing is, Nicole is very busy, Enrique justifies. My brother, I am a woman, and I can tell you some subtle signs that every woman has, and these signs are activated only when they find a man they truly like and are interested in, Evelyn explains. Yes, but Evelyn, you don't understand. She is a career woman, always on business trips. That's meaning business, from hotel to hotel. In fact, she has the habit of collecting hotel Bibles, signing them with the date, and writing an inspiring dedication. Not because she likes to read that vademecum, as she finds it very boring. Instead, she uses her time to unleash her creativity and has created a charming way of tearing out some pages of this blessed book and begins to create beautiful origamis with different shapes of animals or flowers and leaves them as souvenirs in the hotel room at the end of her missionary service. Enrique continues staunchly defending her. Quote, why look for conspiracy when stupidity can explain so much? Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. No, Enrique. Look, if she loves you as she says, then paper origamis are not a problem, because this activates her creativity, relaxes her, and fertilizes her maternal instincts, because first, she wants to give you her affection to keep you emotionally and physically well. Not forgetting that she encourages and supports you in achieving your dreams and goals, Evelyn tells Enrique, very convinced of the behavior of a normal woman without past traumas. But she already did that at the beginning with me, Enrique explains again. Perhaps only at the beginning, and then. Apparently, she has not accepted you as you are, with your imperfections and weaknesses, so she has not stayed with you in your most difficult moments, leaving you alone in the dark. Do you understand, Enrique? Evelyn asks and continues explaining to him the signs of a real woman who is in love. Yes, I understand. Enrique stops defending her. Is she writing to you like before? Is she still calling you? No. So, if a woman loves you, she wants to know everything about you, at every moment, and she doesn't care if she's tired or has 1,000 things to do. Stop fooling yourself, Coño. Evelyn continues explaining to Enrique and is annoyed by his weak and foolish behavior. But don't get angry with me, my sister. Enrique tells Evelyn to calm down. It's that you don't understand, Enrique, that she takes you for granted now, and she is not vulnerable with you. She now has the galactorrhea syndrome, Evelyn responds to Enrique. How so? Galactorrhea, Enrique asks Evelyn, surprised and without the slightest idea of what this means. He doesn't understand the game of false romance because he played with the real cards of love. Galactorrhea is when a woman thinks she has the male member or the seed of life and doesn't need you for procreation, let alone to share and unite with her partner in true love. She sees the sexual act only for fun and to satisfy her carnal desires. Technically, she sees you as a flesh dildo without life or emotions, Evelyn reveals to Enrique. But this is the end. Enrique remains silent for a few seconds after hearing Evelyn. When a woman has conversations that are sensitive to her, that is, when she is opening the door to her heart by sharing her deepest secrets because she trusts you and tells you her fears, she explains to him. Nicole did this at the beginning when she had more time. Enrique returns to justifying Nicole's toxic behaviors. Yes, of course, and now, if she looks at your messages, it's a miracle. But it's okay because maybe she's so busy, saving the world. Listen, Enrique, has Nicole included you in her plans? And does she prefer your company? Because it seems she removed you from her mental planet, Evelyn explains and asks Enrique. Don't tell me that now she's using the spaceship invented by Nikola Tesla and produced by Musk to go to Mars with her whole ex-family without oxygen. Is she an explorer of galaxies, exploradora de galaxias, through space XYX? Enrique asks Evelyn in amazement, because he wants to understand how these religious, lifelong marital bond relationships work. Exactly. In her peanut-sized mind, she went on without you because she preferred the loot, replacing you rather than fixing the mistakes made by both parties. Evelyn is dangerously blunt with her brother Enrique as she confesses the most mean-spirited behaviors of humanity. But we had so many plans, and then Enrique is interrupted by Evelyn because she is very angry and tired of this ignorant and childish behavior. Wake up, Enrique. Live in the present, because this story with Nicole Vigne might have been something beautiful, but you have to be aware that it wasn't. Before saying goodbye, Evelyn invites him to live in today with detachment from emotions that are no longer there. Agreed, my sister, but don't forget that the loot is where I say, and I share it with the whole family, not with a plastic person. Enrique assures Evelyn of being at ease. Reflection. The situation arises from the personality traits of young Enrique. This means he is empathetic, but not a normal empath, rather a supernova empath, attracting people with unhealthy pathologies, such as narcissists. And here enters the beautiful Nicole Vigne perfectly, because Enrique has all the exceptional traits she seeks. He is patient with the psychological, emotional, and childish abuse that a narcissist can inflict, forgives easily, and thinks more about her than himself. But as Adam Grant teaches us in his book, Give and Take, you have to be an otherish par excellence, someone who cares about benefiting others, but also has ambitious goals to promote their own interests. And this is non-negotiable. Quote, "A herd of donkeys led by a lion is superior to a herd of lions led by a donkey." George Washington. But let's take a step back to understand the origin of this man. Enrique Rivera is a reserved person, very sensitive, grateful for his present, with great confidence in the future, and happy for the moment he is living every day because he has his life proposals very clear. Considering him psychologically, he could be labeled as a Sigma INFJ, with some characteristics reflecting the added traits of those who are INTJ. As it is known, once you label me, you negate me, defined by Kierkegaard. But history will tell. For others, he may be called an idealist because many times people cannot see beyond their noses, because he is often considered mysterious and arrogant since he knows what he wants and doesn't ask for permission from society, nor does he seek authorization or validation. At the same time, he focuses on the present and has a natural charisma that, from a young age, made him an inspiring leader in every group he was part of. From an early age, he encouraged people to be the best part of themselves. He led not by imposition, but rather by the natural choice of his peers and friends. He was precocious in his adolescence, as at only 12 years old, he spent more time with men and elders to listen, learn, and discuss topics of interest. At the same time, he spent less time with his peers of the same age who played and had fun. Not because he didn't want to play, but now he had that passion to understand more about life. On the other hand, he frequently accompanied his father, Bismarck, in all his business activities, work, and public relations. This included being present at many political, social, and religious gatherings. "Come, Enrique, come with me in this meeting. Be quick and be smart," his father, Bismarck, would say. "Okay, Dad." He would dress quickly. Enrique was confused by the moralistic doctrines instilled and the social frameworks that had penetrated his subconscious, confusing him completely and making it difficult for him to understand his pedigree. But like him, many Sigmas, women and men, found themselves in the baptism of internal and existential recognition, discovering and creating with love, because the universe does not like the void of emotion. Cleanse your thoughts, open yourself to everything, and do not attach yourself for anything, because the most beautiful things cannot be seen or even touched, but felt with an open heart, Enrique repeats to himself. Do not think you can scare me by telling me I am alone. Look, France is alone. The sun is also alone, but it continues to shine. So is God alone, and the solitude of God is his catalyzing strength to give energy to all, Enrique says aloud, recalling his visit to Paris and a wise man's words. Recognizing his way of thinking outside of the traditional schemes or out of Pandora's box, not being a geeky or the classic nerd in the class. Observing with meticulous attention, devouring new things, and being highly skilled in technology, finance, engineering, and the arts. At the same time, he is humble enough to acknowledge his mistakes and ready to change his mind. Because the experience of life is based on trial and error until finding the solution, like searching for the perfect sound that harmonizes with the string of the instrument you are playing. And despite loving to work alone, he is aware that strength lies in unity. Quote, "It always seems impossible until it's done." Nelson Mandela. Not agreeing with all the concepts and ideas which the status quo offers, and that's why he is not afraid to take another direction that allows him to pursue his proposals in life with a humble attitude that will bring him joy and happiness while doing everything his way, walking fearlessly in unknown territories, like an outsider, like a nomad. Not coincidentally, many of them have B positive as the blood type of nomads par excellence. Their bodies can assimilate a wider range of foods. On the other hand, they have very little respect for authority or what society wants. This is rewarded by their extreme curiosity and intelligence, which drives them to be in continuous learning. They often go out alone, not because they have no other options or friendships, as they could simply pick up the phone and make a call if they wished. However, they enjoy solitude, being alone with il dolce far niente. Just like a visionary with a free spirit to move wherever he wants, so does this man. Despite being a leader in his friendship or work groups, this was not one of his life goals. Therefore, he often emulated a different personality or showed disinterest to avoid recognition or selection. For him, each goal or mission would be a very high responsibility, and with the high level of values he demands of himself, he would be consumed before reaching his true life goal. Quote, "What can you do to promote world peace? Go home and love your family." Mother Teresa of Calcutta. Being the dominant figure in a school, university, or sports team was one of the last things that interested him, and he often hid to avoid being discovered and/or selected. He led by allowing a lot of freedom of expression for his peers, because he treats and sees everyone at the same level. No one above, no one below. He only evaluates based on the true values, skills, or charisma that each person possesses. On the other hand, Enrique was born with severe health problems, allergies, and respiratory issues. It's due to my neurodiversity nature as a INFJ and lack of control over my sensitive abilities, such as intuition, empathy, premonition, synchronicity, telepathy, and clairvoyance that I still didn't know how to manage or control healthily. He knew what his weaknesses were and that he had to balance them. He was diagnosed with asthma within the first 3 months of his life, creating a strong physical and mental weakness. The first wall he had to destroy, seeking solutions to improve his immune system and develop better. Thanks to his parents, who always wanted to give him natural medicines combined with the latest medical technologies, he came to know in Rome, Italy, the good immunologist and professor Francesco di Siena, who changed his life and followed his progress for 2 years, leading him to improve and undergo a superior health transformation, taking advantage of the peak of his primal energy. Moreover, he had the opportunity to experience the goodness of God and feel it in prana, through the air enveloping his lungs as the true manifestation of an energetic flow. Quote, "Never was it so necessary for me as today to have health, heart, and judgment. Today that men without judgment and without heart conspire against the health of the homeland. Juan Pablo Duarte. Breathe me, because you don't see me, but you feel me, says God to Enrique, like the thought that is there, but cannot be seen or touched. And how long can you live without breathing, supremely ignorant man? This is what it means to want to live without God, without the Lord in your life. From there, he was fortunate enough to discover the practices of pranayama, yoga, and kundalini. It is a long process, but one that deserves all the time it requires, because it rewards you with the virtue to seek your freedom, to accept yourself, and to improve your body and mind in an equanimous connection with the spirit. In other words, to be ready with the inner flame that will illuminate you in moments of darkness. Use this method. Discover yourself. Apply this technology and master your emotions, because it is right before you. Look into your heart, and this dawn will come, bringing the warmth that will cover your entire body in light. But the most important thing was the love of his parents that kept him alive during those agonizing times, like a curse made with the original Great Grimoire out of fear for a child who will become a man. They often thought it was his last night in this world. Despite their parents' ignorance and the low resources they had, they offered him a good relationship of affection and understanding. This compensated for many shortcomings and weaknesses in his upbringing, something that is not considered useful in today's world. I am in competition, yes, Enrique exclaimed to himself. A competition with himself, the young Enrique of yesterday, with the Enrique of today. Until strengthening his physical, mental, and emotional skills with discipline, sports, swimming. He also loves to surf, among other things. In addition, a complicated form of dyslexia, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, was added to his challenges, which he struggled with for a long time, and even at the age of 7, he couldn't read correctly. In fact, his teachers and principals informed his parents that he was not suitable for studying, much less for finishing university or being educated to solve analytical or complicated problems. The second test he had to overcome. How? Easy to say, but difficult to apply. Simply by dedicating more time than a normal student. Because he had a hunger for knowledge, to surpass himself, to understand more about what surrounds him, and each time he understood more, the vulnerability, inferiority, and little knowledge we have when we look at the universe, the absolute of the system of this cosmos. How small we are if we observe with the humble inner wisdom that shows us that we are nothing, insignificant in the face of its purity. And this is part of the self-realization of the human being. He travels and enjoys in different countries around the world, gaining a broader and more general knowledge after his studies in Europe to better understand human beings, with social sciences, and after many jumps through different faculties, film, engineering, architecture, among others. In this way, he decided to pursue and complete international politics and combine it with a master's focused on the economy, business, and finances of Europe. But this was only to acquire a profession for work and seek the daily or life sustenance. Quote, "What you resist, persists," Neil Donald Walsh. This means that he still had some significant black holes in the form of leopard spots, because he was still very naive to understand his emotions and emotional reactions, as well as to comprehend and analyze other people with good or bad intentions. Therefore, he lost in many areas, especially in the perfidy of human relationships and dark manipulations. Enrique Rivera is a fortunate man. God, the universe, or whatever you want to call it, has blessed him with all the blessings of life. Born, the firstborn, to a couple from the Caribbean islands in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, his father, a veteran, from the Dominican Civil War, a constitutionalist in 1965, and his mother, a history teacher. They offered him the opportunity to grow up in a very close-knit family, and he was desired as the first child of his father's third marriage. On the other hand, his family is very religious. The neo-catechumenal way gave Enrique the beginning of his creed and the value of his life to follow before his falls, because it was the crucible test. Look at them. They want to kill me. They have pride and advance against me. Oh, protect me, Lord. Until reaching the promised land, almost orthodox, but he always had the curiosity to ask, why this? And why that? How come? Matthew 7:7. Keep on asking, and it will be given you. Keep on seeking, and you will find. Keep on knocking, and it will be open to you. But unfortunately, his parents had a certain mental delay. They were enveloped by fear or terror of the divine hand called for them, God. Because many things are like that, simple, right? But I cannot fear God if Yahweh is love. Now everything that is outside of God is to be feared. But I could leave this topic for another book. Quote, O muerte, ¿dónde está tu victoria? Cantos del camino neocatecumenal. Returning to knowing who Enrique is, he is very creative and protective from an early age. He also had the blessing of having many sisters who adored him, 8 beautiful maidens and 1 little prince, the results of his father's 3 marriages. His sisters showed him how women he liked, thought, and went through their various emotional phases. And thus he understood that there was nothing to understand. One must simply live and enter into the emotions they experience, because that's why we are different sexes, and that attracts us. If you know how to treat the opposite sex, you have completed a good part of the enigma of how this society works, his older sisters used to tell Enrique. But no person is perfect, and in the same way, there is no perfect family. Because every family, no matter how wonderful it may seem, has its flaws, problems, limits, and dysfunctions. Therefore, Enrique had to face this third obstacle, which is family dysfunctions, and use them as a chisel to expand his heart and let himself be guided by grace, trust, compassion, and courage. You can only accept and love your family as it is, but you can choose your friends. That's why he chose to live by his own choice and not by opportunity. He chose to make changes and not excuses. He chose to excel and not compete. He chose to step out of his comfort zone. He chose motivation over manipulation. He chose to listen to himself versus not doing so. He chose self-esteem instead of self-pity. He chose to fulfill his destiny. He chose to do the work and finish what he started. How? Fighting the worst battles, the internal wars or entropies, without fear, without hesitation, without doubt, freeing himself from that debilitating fear that is a latent disease and had weakened him for a long time. This had narcotized his faith, entering a state of total coma. Out of fear of not being accepted, fear of change, fear of uncertainty, fear of being inadequate, fear of failure, fear of leaving things incomplete, fear of impossibility, fear of losing control, fear of rejection, fear of being hurt, fear of being judged by others, fear of not being loved, fear of something bad, traumatic, or dramatic happening. All these doubts led him into a state of paralysis, of lethargy. But the time is now, because there is no perfect moment, and one must think differently from what is considered normal, since mediocrity is also accepted as normalcy. So, it is better to be abnormal, that is, to be disciplined with intensity, consistency, and be a creator. Having the power of hope to seek solutions in the midst of chaos, eliminating justification, stopping blaming others, seeking the means internally within oneself, with a mindset strengthened by mistakes made, like a fighter who rises after suffering a fall from the blows of an adversary, but does not lose motivation, eliminating negativity like an incurable optimist who sows good seeds in the ground and does not allow the opinions of others to control the mind, much less avoiding confronting his demons because they must be faced. How? Leading oneself with confidence or healing fear with love that allows immediate execution in serenity, paving the way. Whether you are or want to be part of the forces of eternal light, a spiritual being on the fourth level of the diamond, that constantly confront the terrifying unknown without allowing them to take possession or control of the minds of the world. To provide a better future for future generations, and offer those who will come a path with the goal of following the mission of truth, completing any task, helping someone, respecting everyone, and never giving up in the face of life's difficulties. At the same time, he was able to overcome all limits, social prejudices, and psychological barriers that confined him to a certain position. He did not follow human rules because his values and principles were superior. He wasn't interested in the hierarchical scale, as he assessed people more by their actions than their possessions or status. He made himself available to help and listen to his loved ones and/or friends if needed. To protect himself from opportunistic individuals, he had developed quick and effective evaluation and intuition skills to discern whether a person was sincere, healthy, and nurturing or, conversely, sociopathic, narcissistic, fake, and/or toxic. Until the grand pandemic arrived and changed the rules of the game, social and human interactions would no longer be physical or real as before, but rather virtual and remote. This required an immediate update to Enrique's protective intuition. As Seneca said, you can postpone, but time will not. In other words, Enrique needed a software update, a system reset, a new antivirus and/or VPN, a change in mindset, and the application of the teachings of psychologist Carol Dweck in her written work, Mindset, The New Psychology of Success, for a new Enrique 3.0. Relationships were progressing more through virtual means, and only technologies had taken the lead worldwide. They were creating more protective filters for people with ill intentions and a wide range of distance for their advantage. This means that a tech-savvy person from South Korea could easily scam an elderly person in Canada and disappear without a trace while getting away with it. Moreover, every day a new social platform was emerging, and people were forced to stay at home due to the deadly consequences of the pandemic. No medicine, medical study, vaccine, hospital, health institution, or government had any idea how to counteract the virus called coronavirus 19, which continued to rapidly spread worldwide and brought the economy of every nation to its knees. Adding to the discomfort of the rapid spread, the hyperinformation of sensationalist news, rhesus, Rh negative, had attached itself. As you already know, these X or negative news sells more than positive ones, fueling the force of the prolonged pandemic that soared like never before, that is to say, at the speed of light. But apparently it was he who had taken the water of the Lord, the divine potion, the new G. It was he, the Charles GTP, the new god of communications, the new cybernetic browser, the one who had brought Hermes to his knees, because he was slow as a worm to serve his people, the cosmos. But now, as before, the deus ex machina of the HP had lost itself in the conquests of lands and riches in the name of Jerusalem, or even worse, in the name of God. Therefore, this pandemic and Rh-negative news had worsened the situation in countries. This delicate societal context, with all these available applications that amalgamate your brain until you reach total burnout, or in other words, increased fear reaching the very doors of homes. This led to a great number of misfortunes, perhaps more due to fear than the actual effects of the fable pandemic that leaves many families in different countries in distress. Not to mention the misery of economic desperation and the loneliness of separated human beings. However, only a few strong individuals understand and appreciate the strength that can be found there. Blessed pandemic, which allowed for a forced pause in this frenetic race. A race of what and for what? Enrique thinks when he meditates. It wasn't a waste of time, nor a pause, delay, or slowness. It was the moment for many to discover, not to be stopped, but to evolve, an opportunity for transformation. And it is at that moment that Enrique discovers the purpose of his life, the second most important experience for him. He had to overcome phase 1, which is simply living, working, and perhaps starting a family. Phase 2 is thinking that everyone is against society, as there is a government and power conspiracy where many get trapped. Phase 3 is meditating, doing yoga, praying, and becoming a spiritual person to achieve balance with the universe, harmony with Lord Yahweh. Finally, phase 4 is to elevate oneself, recognizing life's responsibilities, carrying your own water bucket, and understanding how precious each drop you let fall on the path is. In other words, being aware that governments are not there to save you or solve your problems. These are the 4 real diamond points that every economy, politics, religion, and people must promote to achieve balance with the universe, unite logic with spirit, and work hard and intelligently to achieve every goal you set for yourself. Rise up, to die in order to be born again. Take a good hot bath and then quickly move into cold water in the midst of winter, after working with the soil in the field and needing to wash away all the dirt clinging to your skin. Give yourself time to love yourself, like a newborn baby, inspired by Frida Kahlo, who, in its natural time, will unfold like a lotus flower to bring more color to humanity. Get to know yourself in the midst of chaos and solitude. Break the old social, religious, economic, and industrial patterns. In the end, this coronavirus has affected most of the population and turned out to be a new influence, like every year. Quote, "Every man must decide whether he will walk in the light of creative altruism or in the darkness of destructive selfishness." Martin Luther King Jr. But as Deepak Chopra says, all great changes are preceded by chaos. Because the chaos you've created can be fixed. This led him to exit a relationship damaged by toxic control from an unknown love that was found by chance on a platform outside of real life, a balm for the heart. Despite Nicole Vigne having a subtle and distinctive sexual character, like magnetic magic, she attracted you in a secret and almost childlike way. She was astute in her way of thinking and speaking. Not coincidentally, she had a background in law and thought and acted like a true devil's advocate, much more sophisticated in playing with words, applying them in rules, and entangling you in them like a boa, without even realizing that you were deceived by her old tactics that have been wrapping around generations and generations of this naive humanity. And this leads us to understand the difference between a romantic relationship and God, because nowadays many people seek more of a savior than a life partner. That's why it is crucial to comprehend that two people truly love each other when they are capable of living without the other, but choose to live or share their happiness with their partner, without the need to engage in the magical illusion of the other. The ultimate goal of life is to maintain individual spiritual growth, and this is achieved in the solitude of being human, entering the island of one's consciousness, and at the root of our loneliness. For this reason, Enrique wanted a new life based on service to others, but for that, he had to maintain and improve his health, well-being, prosperity, success, and self-love in order to better serve others. As a result, he wrote the following steps. 1. Be grateful to yourself, your Lord, or the universe. 2. Always take care of your thoughts and physical health. 3. Meditate, Train, achieve balance within yourself. 4. Maintain a clean and energetic mindset. 5. Work hard and intelligently. 6. Study, prepare, and always strive to improve. 7. Improve your financial situation. 8. Pray with wisdom and compassion. 9. Be happy and powerfully joyful for the life you have. 10. Forgive yourself and forgive others. 11th. Be open to everything and attached to nothing. 12. Achieve your goals gradually and don't forget to enjoy the process. 13. Respect everyone and help them. 14. Surround yourself only with people who uplift you and are happy to see it. 15. Care, love, and protect your family, friends, and community. 16th. Be loyal, a warrior, a maiden, a knight of peace. 17. Unite your mind, unite the people. 18. Create the best you can to offer to humanity. 19. Be humble, disciplined, and activate a healing heart. 20. Teach all that is good and give more than you receive. 21. Know the true love of yourself to offer it to others. 22nd. Improve your lineage in the reunification of lost houses, the thousands of peoples. 23rd. Be rebellious in achieving your transformation, serving and protecting the people of Gaia.